Good morning, everyone. The Bible reading comes from Proverbs 21, verse 1 to 8. The king's heart is a stream of water in the hand of the Lord. He turns it wherever he will. Every way of a man is right in his own eyes, but the Lord weighs the heart. To do righteousness and justice is more acceptable to the Lord than sacrifice. Haughty eyes and a proud heart, the lamp of the wicked, are sin. The plans of the diligent lead surely to abundance, but everyone who is hasty comes only to poverty. The getting of treasures by a lying tongue is a fleeting vapor and a snare of death. The violence of the wicked will sweep them away, because they refuse to do what is just. The way of the guilty is crooked, but the conduct of the pure is upright. Amen.
Today, the title of my sermon is called God's in Control. Now, before I explain to you the reason why I think God's in control, I'd just like to ask a question. Who's here have ever read a self-help book or listened to a podcast about how to improve yourself? Don't be shy. Now, for some of you, you might be thinking, girl, what are you talking about? I already just listened to a podcast on my way to church this morning. Well, for me, I'm more of a book nerd, and the last self-help book I read was actually about just a month ago, I think, and the title of the self-help book I read was called How to Win People Over with Influence. So far, not a lot of luck there. Did you know that the self-help or personal development market is a huge industry? In 2014, just in America alone, the self-help market was worth nearly $10 billion. $10 billion! So I was really interested in what's out there in the market. And so like maybe most modern females in this world today, I did a simple Google search and I typed in Best Self-Help Books 2019. And here are some of the examples of books that came up. The first one was, Girl, Stop Apologizing. Number 2, Everything is Figure-outable. 3, It's Great to Suck at Something. Best Self, Be You, Only Better. Slay Like a Mother, How to Destroy What's Holding You Back so you can live the life you want. Better Apart, the radically positive way to separate. An Edited Life, Simple Steps to Streamlining Your Life at Work and at Home. The Algebra of Happiness and the Illusion of Money, Why Chasing Money is Stopping You from Receiving It. Now, I wonder if anyone else here find it strange that we love self-help books. Could it be the reason why we love self-help books so much is because we want to find ways to control all the areas in life that we care so much about? I wonder what you guys care about the most. Could it be money or saving time? Maybe it's about our relationships or weight loss or finding our true self, being happy in life. Or is it about taking what we want? Would you agree that our lives are often more out of control than in control? And so we want to find skills and ways and techniques to control the things that we actually can't completely control. And that's why self-help books and podcasts are so popular. We want answers. We want to be better at how we do life. And that leads me back to the title of my sermon today. There are no self-help books or podcasts that will tell us the truth that only the Bible is willing to tell us. And that is God's in control. There are lots of places in the Bible that tells us that. But today I'd like to focus on one of the wisdom books, the book of Proverbs. And in Proverbs chapter 21, verses 1 to 8, we come across this bold statement: God's in control. Imagine this as a title for a self-help book. You're not in control. God is. But before I continue, can I clarify just 2 quick things? The first thing is, I don't think self-help books are trash. I believe a lot of them have useful advice that we can learn from. And secondly, the Bible is not a self-help book. It's God's word, and it contains wisdom and truth from him. God's in control. Have a look back at Proverbs 21, verse 1. It says, "In the Lord's hand, the king's heart is a stream of water that he channels toward all who please him." Most of you guys might know that the guy who wrote most of this book was Solomon, and Solomon happened to be a king. He was the most powerful man in Israel, which meant that he understood the power, the perks, and the privileges of being a king. You can basically have whatever you want. Power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Now, a lot of us here may not be in really high positions of authority, and so I guess a lot of us wouldn't be in this danger of being absolutely corrupt. That's like the worst case scenario. But for anyone who's tasted power, and I'm sure a lot of us have in different ways, we know that power can and does get into our heads. In our little hearts, we start to think that we are like a king or a queen. And then we start to think that we are invincible. We think that our ideas are better than everyone else's. When Rachel speaks, the whole world should listen to her, or at least the kids and youth leaders. Am I right? Can I get an amen there, please? Why didn't any youth leaders say amen? All right, guys, we need a meeting after church tonight. We feel in control. Have you guys ever felt the adrenaline of feeling like a boss? People do what you ask them to do. Your ideas matter. And perhaps most important of all, suddenly it feels like, wow, people are noticing me. It feels empowering to feel in control of others and our situations in life. Now, hold that thought here. I'm going to give you an illustration that helps us understand what Solomon was getting at in verse 1. In the past, back before pipes and taps were invented, which they are a great invention, people needed to think of creative solutions to get constant access to water. And apparently the first people to successfully control the flow of water from lakes or rivers to their farms were the Egyptians and the Mesopotamians. Now we call this irrigation. The Israelites probably learned these irrigation techniques from the Egyptians when they lived there, and sadly they were enslaved there for hundreds of years. They learned that you can dig canals and ditches to bring water from the rivers to the land. And so in other words, channeling water to where you want it to go. Are you guys with me? So what they were trying to do was take control over the use of water. Out in the Middle East, they needed water to give their crops a better chance. Now, isn't that what we want too? A better chance. Kings had money and power to give themselves and their families a better chance in life. And when I talk about a better chance, I'm not referring to how unfortunately some people have to work really hard and struggle to fight for equality. What I mean by better chance is I'm talking about people who want to have a better chance that gives them a better advantage over everyone else in the world. And so for them, it's about securing their place in society. Let me give you an illustration. Do you guys remember King Herod? If you don't, you will soon, because Christmas is coming soon, and Herod was the guy who tried to kill baby Jesus. Now, King Herod, as his name says, he was a king, so he had lots of power and money and everything, and he decided to build a palace on this super high cliff. Today, it's known as Masada. Has anyone heard of Masada before? It's also the name of a private school I know in St. Ives. Now, this palace, and it's not his only palace, is amazing. It's huge. It's about 400 meters above the Dead Sea. And just for a point of reference, the Centerpoint Tower or today it's known as Sydney Tower, it's only 305 meters high. But Masada is 400 meters high. That's so high. It's huge. It's crazy. And if you ever go to Israel today, and I do encourage you guys to go, it's a great place to visit. If you do go there, you have to take a chairlift to get to Masada. Herod was not dumb at all. He chose a very strategic location for his holiday house. The cliff has very steep sides, so it would have been quite hard for his enemies to attack him. He built a wall around his palace. He carved a bathhouse on the edge of the cliff that overlooks the Dead Sea. So talk about a better chance in life. Herod also had a better view. That is so amazing. As you might already know, Herod, with all his powers, also channeled waters, and he had massive cisterns in his palace to store as much water as he can, just in case a siege might happen to him. Wow, imagine what life was like for him. Every time he takes a bath in his palace, he revels in the power that he's created. The title of his self-help book would be How to Be a King Like a Boss. Step 1, build a massive palace overlooking the Dead Sea. And then step 2, watch your people crawl like ants below you. The king's heart wants a better chance. Now, isn't that what a lot of us want in life too? Do you ever find yourself asking questions like, how do I get a better chance in life? Or how do I give my kids a better chance in life? One up against everyone else they have to compete against. How do I make fast money? Or what's the easiest way to keep my spouse happy without me spending a lot of my money? And that's the meaning behind Proverbs 21 verse 1. Because even King Solomon, who was the most powerful man in his time, thought that he could completely control his life. But he realized that he was only just a man too. No matter how big a fortress we build to protect ourselves from our enemies, or how much effort we build our lives to move it to a direction we think we want to go, we need to understand that God's in control. Sometimes the most unexpected things, good things and bad things, do happen to us. It's a reminder that we have limitations. And wherever we are in life, we need to always have the right attitude. And that's what verse 2 is saying. It says, a person may think their own ways are right, but the Lord weighs the heart. You know, there's a difference between in control and in control. And I know I just basically said the exact same thing, but let me explain. God's given all of us free will to make choices in life, to love Him and to love other people through our unique personality and our skills. So we should make choices and we should take responsibility for our actions. But what we do and plan should stem from a heart that desires to please God. It shouldn't be about me getting a better chance in life so that I can be on top of the world or at least better than the person next to me. It should be about living together in community life. There's often an expression used to describe influential and successful figures. We call them a self-made man or a self-made woman. Our society tells us that what we do and how successful we are is a major part of our identity. And so to let someone else dictate that, such as God, is quite counterintuitive in our context. But the Bible teaches us a different perspective in how we should live our life. For example, do you consult God in your decisions? Have you ever asked questions about what does God think about our career paths? Or what does God think about our relationships, romantic and the platonic ones? Do our consumption habits honor God? Let me tell you a story about an American man called Millard Fuller. Fuller was born in 1935, and he studied economics and law. Later on, he, surprise, surprise, became a business person and a lawyer. Like, oh, cool, that's what happens, usually. Usually, God's in control. And then, so he studied law, economics, became a business person and a lawyer. And then when he was just 29 years old, he became a self-made millionaire. When he was about 33 years old, he and his wife decided to give up their wealth and live a very different life. After a few years, they started a non-profit organization in America to help people build houses. They built houses together with low-income families, and the families only had to repay the cost of materials used at 0% interest. Today, this organization is helping people all around the world, and they are known as Habitat for Humanity. Since 1976, Habitat for Humanity has helped more than 22 million people build or improve the place they call home. Now I wonder, what would Fuller's impact be like if he stayed just a 33-year-old millionaire? In a society that's all about being a self-made man or a self-made woman, it's counterintuitive to follow God's plans for us. But it's exactly that heart and obedience that he demands from each and every one of us. And that's why in verse 3, Solomon says, to do what is right and just is more acceptable to the Lord than sacrifice. Let's shift gears to look at how Solomon describes those who put God second place. Have a look back at verses 4 to 8. Haughty eyes and a proud heart, the unplowed field of the wicked produce sin. The plans of the diligent leads to profit as surely as haste leads to poverty. A fortune made by a lying tongue is a fleeting vapor and a deadly snare. The violence of the wicked will drag them away, for they refuse to do what is right. The way of the guilty is devious, but the conduct of the innocent is upright. Solomon here uses 3 different body parts to describe the wicked: haughty eyes, a lying tongue, and a proud heart. Eyes, tongue, and heart, the trinity of wickedness. Let's have a look at the first one. Solomon says that haughty eyes produce sin. Our eyes cause us to sin if we're not careful. When we look at things, we want them. Now, it's not a surprise that companies use the power of strategically framing a product in the right angle to lure us to buy that product. They pay thousands of dollars to put ads on TV, and they pay even more money to get a billboard in a state of origin game. Pictures are so appealing. Have you guys ever fell into a trap, like I often do, when you go into a shop and then you're like, yes, I'm going to get this, and then you go in, but then you come out with more items than you've actually intended to buy in the first place? Morgan's smiling, so she's like secretly, yes, that's me. Shoppers Anonymous. So that happened to me quite a few times, maybe more than a few. But then I realized, well, when online shopping came, I thought to myself, yes, I can try online shopping. I love how Rachel's shaking like, no, online shopping is worse. Stay away. We are suckers for visuals. Would you agree? The eye is a powerful and untamable organ. It's like a vacuum that sucks in whatever it sees, and it doesn't filter anything at all. And so Solomon warns us that our desire for power and control will also cause us to sin. When we think we're in control, we start to see ourselves and our world from a different perspective. Just like King Herod, who built a palace on a massive cliff, and he just enjoys his time watching everything from above, we're sort of like him. When we have haughty eyes, We start to think that we're on top of the world and that we are above everyone else. We become haughty, that is, arrogantly superior and disdainful. We look at the world with haughty eyes. We think that we've done so well and everyone else isn't as successful as we are because they don't work as hard as we do. No one measures up. We don't listen to advice. We're up high in our lofty palace looking down on other people. I wonder if King David's fall from grace was because he developed haughty eyes too. He let lust control his desires. He covered up his sin by murdering Bathsheba's husband, and he wouldn't listen to advice. The prophet Nathan had to tell him a story to gently ease him to realizing the heinous sins that he had committed. Haughty eyes are dangerous. So how are your eyes doing right now? What do you have your eyes set on? Or in other words, what's most important to you right now? I love what Hebrews 12 verses 1 to 2 says. Let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles, that is, haughty eyes, and let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us, fixing our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of faith. Run with perseverance. Put your haughty eyes away and fix your eyes on Jesus. The next one is a lying tongue. Solomon says, a fortune made by a lying tongue is a fleeting vapor and a deadly snare. Can I ask you guys, what is your relationship with words? In 2017, Huffington Post released an article called 60% of your colleagues are lying to you. Let me read some of the article to you. It says, how many people have you spoken with today? Chances are that most of them lied to you and that they did it more than once. It's a hard fact to accept, but even your closest friends and co-workers lie to you regularly. University of Massachusetts psychologist Robert Feldman has studied lying for more than a decade, and his research has reached some startling conclusions. Most shocking is that 60% of people lie during a typical 10-minute conversation, and that they average 2 to 3 lies during that short time frame. Now, I think a lot of you now are sort of rewinding to that supper bit, which was actually a bit over 10 minutes. And everyone's just thinking back to the conversation like, I've just talked to like 3 people. Does that mean like I had 9 lies like come firing at me? I hope you guys don't do that at all. But what I think Feldman is, I think he's onto something here. He goes on to say, people lie in everyday conversation to appear more likable and competent. While men and women lie equally as often, they tend to lie for different reasons. Women were more likely to lie to make the person they were talking to feel good, while men lied most often to make themselves look better. Both men and women's motive when it comes to lying are just as bad. From Feldman's study, it looks like we have an epidemic of lying and pretending here. Sometimes lying and manipulating others can get us somewhere, but Solomon warns us that in the end, what we get is a fleeting vapor and a deadly snare. Telling a lie gives us an easy way out, but have you noticed that once the lie is exposed, and often it does, so either a serious lie is exposed or people eventually realize that you're a chronic liar. Once that happens, it destroys your relationships and it destroys your reputation and possibly it destroys your career as well. Think back to the Watergate scandal. Nixon ended up resigning because probably it looked better to resign than being impeached. Think about all the Me Too scandals where trusted and well-known celebrities and religious leaders are exposed as frauds. Would you risk your life building your life on lies just for quick fortune and fame. History tells us that it's not worth the risk. Another thing I'd like to touch on about words is the danger of flattery. I think over time, we've elevated flattery from insincere praise, which is another word for lying, to a social norm. Flattery isn't helpful. It's insincere, and it's another way to win popularity. You know, there are other ways to make people like you. For starters, we can treat them like human beings and appreciate them for who they are. Don't throw around words like they don't mean anything at all. Live honestly, even if you risk losing your job or a relationship. We need to trust that we can't control people's responses to us, but we can control our integrity and how we respond to other people and to the circumstances around us. In the words of Rebel Wilson's character in the Audible ad, make words great again. What you say speaks volumes about your character. So let's make words great again. Now, the final thing I want to look at is a proud heart. All of us have a proud heart. It's the reason why Adam and Eve sinned in the first place. It's the reason why we reject God's plans and try to control everything in our lives. Psalm 118, verse 8, which is quite close to the dead center of the Bible, it says, "It is better to take refuge in the Lord than to trust in humans." Would you guys agree that life is a struggle to let God be in control of our lives? And sometimes our pride keeps us in denial. It keeps us from running back to God when we stray from Him. Know when you're out of control. Let me tell you a story. There was a woman called Sarah Gertrude Shapiro, and she used to work in reality TV shows. And one of them was the American Bachelor. So after a few years of experience, she decided to create her own TV series called Unreal. And in this series, it's basically about The Bachelor, but they call it Everlasting. And in the show, the main character is also a producer she's a producer also called Rachel. Hi, if you don't know me, my name is Rachel, and I'm the kids and youth pastor here at Northern Life. So Rachel, not me, this other fictional character, Rachel, she is a producer, and she's a really good producer. She knows the right things to say and to do, to get the right reactions from the contestants. And so if the boss wanted the girls to cry and start a fight with each other, they would always send out Rachel. And Rachel goes out, and 10 minutes later, you will see television magic happen. Drama, tears, and heartfelt moments. That's how good she is. Rachel is behind the scenes, controlling all the people around her, making good television for ratings. But the irony is, Rachel is in complete control at work, but she's actually a complete mess. She struggles with depression, and she's terrible with relationships, and she hurts whoever she comes into contact with. Her boss is an enabler. She tells Rachel to suppress all her emotions and focus on work. Rachel, the producer, who is excellent at manipulating and controlling others, cannot hold herself together. She comes to a point where she's so distraught and she accidentally gets involved in a crime that she finally decides to check herself into rehab. Someone who's so good at controlling others, but sadly so out of touch with her own soul and emotions. The story is fiction, but I don't think it's far from reality. The thing about power and control is we want to control our outer environment because our inner self is so hard to control. We want to lock away our sins and keep all our shame and insecurities hidden from others. If others can't see it, then surely we would forget about it too. Can I tell you one more story about another girl called Rachel, whose life also got a bit out of control? And this is actually my own personal story. And I don't know if you guys knew about this, but towards the end of high school, I actually developed some OCD. So OCD stands for Obsessive Compulsive Disorder. I bet you guys didn't know that I used to like grass. So, yes. So around year 10, I've discovered that if I worked hard to study, I can actually get decent results. Like, who would have thought, right? But sometimes in life, you just have to experience life to understand what many people are trying to tell you. Like, oh, if you study hard, maybe you get some good results. So, for me, that's how it worked for me, right? And I was like, oh, cool. Like, I'll just study hard, and then I will have a very high chance of getting good results. And so for me, I actually discovered that I'm good at controlling my studies. I told myself, okay, I want to do really well in HSC, so for 2 years, I'm going to not watch any TV. So I did that, not watch TV. And I told myself, I'm not going to go out to have fun with my friends and parties. I'm not going to do that, except for if it's church and youth group. And I created this really organized study schedule. So I was like, yes, I'm going to be really good at studying. So I did all of that. And I think the main reason why I became so obsessed with studying is because I really wanted to get a high ATAR score. That's because my brother got into selective school and I didn't. I actually failed twice in selective. And I wanted to prove to my family, and I wanted to prove to myself and maybe some people around me that I am just as smart as my brother. And now just a quick disclaimer here. My family never really forced me to study. They were very encouraging and they never looked down on me. So this was completely just myself and my pride and just wanted to get good marks in the HSC. And so so halfway through 11, I just realized, my family realized first that I started developing a lot of unhealthy habits. For example, I started to wash my hands a lot. And by a lot, I mean probably about 20 times a day. I became very fixated on some objects or whatever caught my eye. I just can't stop staring at it. And I had to look at, because sometimes it's just wrong maybe, and I just had to measure it with my eyes. And I sometimes try to, if it's crooked, I have to wheel it, W-I-L-L, wheel it back to place. I think the worst thing for me in this OCD thing was that I just can't stop counting in my head. So I had a thing where I had to count to 4. And 4, every time I count 1, 2, 3, 4, it had to be the perfect tone and speed in my mind. And if it's slightly wrong, I had to redo the whole cycle. And so sometimes when I'm talking to people, I'm just 1, 2, 3, 4, counting. And so definitely not very present. And as you all know now, I became scared of grass. One day I stepped into wet grass and my whole body just felt this horrible sensation, and then I just had a phobia of grass. I'm a lot better now, but back then it was mentally, physically, and emotionally so exhausting. And my family just kept telling me that I wasn't living a healthy life, but I kept ignoring them. Because I had and I still have a proud heart. And one day I just couldn't take the stress any longer. I broke down in tears. And from that point onwards, I finally understood what my family was trying to tell me all along. That something was wrong with me. In trying to control my world, I completely lost control. And slowly I had to let go of control so that God could start to take control back of my life again. Everyone has telltale signs when they're desperately trying to take control of their life. Signs are good. They tell us something's wrong. But a proud heart stops us from taking action in our life. I wonder how your life is doing right now. Are you in control? Is God in control? Or are you completely out of control? Can I encourage you today to put down your pride and ask God to take back control of your life? It takes courage to put down your pride and admit that life isn't going the way you've planned. It takes humility to let go of everything that's holding you back and to say, God, you're in control. You're in control. I can't do this anymore. You are in control. To finish up, I'd just like to share with you about Alcoholics Anonymous. As you know, they have a 12-step program to help addicts try and get back on a path of sobriety. Let me tell you the first 3 steps. Step 1 says, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives have become unmanageable. Step 2 says, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. And step 3 says, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood Him. And at the end of an AA meeting, members usually recite this prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. You're not in control. God is.